border wall. President Trump puts pressure on Democrats to fund the wall on the U.S.-Mexican border as the budget deadline looms. One pro-life Democrat. A local election is getting national attention because of his views on abortion. The Pope in Egypt. A plan set for the Holy Father as he travels to the turbulent region. We'll have a report from Rome. And a new blessed. A French priest who dedicated his life to educating young people is one step closer to becoming a saint. On EWTN News Nightly for Monday, April 24th, 2017. Good evening from Washington, D.C., and thank you to those of you joining us from around the world for news from a Catholic perspective. I'm Lauren Ashburn. The United States issues hundreds of new sanctions against Syria over President Bashar al-Assad's alleged use of chemical weapons. It comes as UN Ambassador Nikki Haley says the U.S. could strike North Korea.
This is a real threat to the world, whether we want to talk about it or not. North Korea is a big world problem, and it's a problem we have to finally solve.
The Trump administration has been working to rally support behind its efforts to pressure Pyongyang into abandoning its nuclear program and ending missile tests. The remarks come as the president meets with the ambassadors of the UN Security Council at the White House.
Great day for the Security Council, great day with the president, and certainly more good to come out of this meeting.
As the country doubles down on North Korea, the administration is also taking aim at Syrian President Bashar al-Assad after the recent chemical attack on civilians in Syria. The 271 new punishments are part of a broader effort to cut off funding and other support amid the country's escalating civil war.
These sweeping sanctions are intended to hold the Assad regime and those who support it directly or indirectly accountable.
Democrats say President Trump could avoid a government shutdown if he backs off from demanding lawmakers and fund the border wall with Mexico. This Saturday, the government will run out of money unless lawmakers pass a budget that funds federal agencies. As the deadline looms, the border wall has emerged as the biggest stumbling block to a budget agreement. President Trump calls a border wall with Mexico an important tool to stop the flow of drugs into the United States. And he warns on Twitter, if the wall is not built, which it will be, the drug situation will never be fixed the way it should be. It's an issue that the president campaigned on. Build that wall! Build that wall! And promised to deliver if elected.
We are going to build a great border wall.
Now he is demanding money for the wall be included in a must-pass spending bill. Without it, the government risks a shutdown.
I think Congress will provide necessary funds, and there'll be ways to fund this wall.
The administration says the wall will be built, saying construction could begin by the end of summer.
We will commence the construction of the wall in those places first that make sense, and then build out from there.
Rachel Bovard is a federal budget expert at the Heritage Foundation, a conservative think tank that advised the president.
Most of the members, the sitting members now, voted for a border wall in 2006.
She says Republicans in Congress need to step up and help the president keep his campaign promises.
There isn't going to be time, for the individual members to stand up and offer amendments and do all these things. And that's, again, another problem, with waiting this long. And you've put it all on the Republican leadership. And so now, if anything gets done, it's going to be because or in spite of them.
President Trump has repeatedly asserted that Mexico would pay for the wall. He said it is necessary to stop both the flow of immigrants crossing the border illegally and drug smugglers. Arkansas prepares for the country's first double execution since 2000. 2 convicted murderers are set to die tonight. Courts have denied requests to stop the executions of Jack Jones and Marcel Williams. This follows another execution in Arkansas last week, and a 4th execution is set for Thursday. The state is in a rush because the drug used to sedate death row inmates is set to expire at the end of the month. The U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has called on Arkansas to abandon executions and instead commute their sentences to life in prison. If you're pro-life, can you be part of the Democratic Party? That's a question Democrats are grappling with as a member of the party runs for mayor of Omaha, Nebraska. It's a local election that's gaining national attention. Capitol Hill correspondent Jason Calvi has the story. Good evening, Jason.
Lauren, as a state senator, Democratic Heath Mello voted for a pro-life bill requiring abortion doctors let women know where they can get a free ultrasound before the abortion. Now the 37-year-old is running for mayor of Omaha, but he's getting plenty of resistance from pro-abortion Democrats.
He wants to make Omaha a city that is welcoming for all people.
Democrat Heath Mello is a Catholic father of two who's promising to create jobs and fight crime in Omaha if elected mayor.
Heath Mello, when he was running for state senator, emphatically said that he was pro-life, with no exceptions.
But Mello now tells the Huffington Post his faith inspires his personal views, but he will not work to restrict abortion. He's getting support from the Democratic National Committee and former presidential candidate Bernie Sanders, who campaigned with Mello just last week at a rally of more than 3,000 in Omaha. Sanders is following through on a promise to promote younger leaders for the Democratic Party. NARAL Pro-Choice America is blasting the DNC, calling the event politically stupid, puzzling, and troubling. And high-ranking Senator Dick Durbin of Illinois says Democrats who vote pro-life are not welcome.
We need to be understanding of those who take a different position because of personal conscience, but as long as they are prepared to back the law, Roe versus Wade, prepared to back women's rights as we've defined them under the law, then I think they can be part of the party.
Support for abortion is in the Democrats' platform, but Democrats for Life, a group that calls itself the pro-life voice in the party, says that's wrong.
To expect these candidates not to vote their conscience is wrong, and it's really hurting our party. If you look at our numbers nationwide, we're a minority party right now. We're at our lowest numbers since the 1930s.
Senator Joe Manchin, a Democrat from West Virginia who has voted for pro-life bills in the past, has gotten criticism after posing for a picture with someone holding a pro-Planned Parenthood sign. We reached out to his office. His press secretary tells me the senator was taking pictures with constituents. One of them happened to have the sign. Manchin's office says he's still pro-life. His position hasn't changed. Lauren?
Jason, what is Senator Manchin's voting record when it comes to pro-life bills?
According to the National Right to Life, Senator Manchin had a 75% pro-life voting record during the last session of Congress, including voting for the 20-week abortion ban.
Jason Calvi on Capitol Hill. Thank you, Jason. The commander of U.S. forces in Afghanistan implies that Russia is providing weapons to the Taliban. General John Nicholson met today with the U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis in Afghanistan. Mattis blasted the Taliban for its attack on an Afghan military base Friday that killed up to 140 people.
This fight is going to go on. We're in an era of frequent skirmishing. It's going to be far-flung, and that's the nature of this fight.
Mattis calls for unity in the fight against terrorism. He said no nation can stop it without the help of others. France moves a step closer to a new president. In the first round of elections, newcomer and centrist candidate Emmanuel Macron took first place, and far-right leader Marine Le Pen came in a close second. Final voting is May 7th. Joining us now from Le Touvet in southeastern France is Catholic journalist Hendro Munsterman. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Macron and Le Pen are very different. He promises a more tolerant France and a united Europe with open borders, and Le Pen is more France first, calling for closed borders, tougher security, dropping the euro to return to the French franc. How do both candidates, however, stand on issues important to Catholic voters, like abortion?
That's an interesting question because the Front National, the party of Marine Le Pen, changed the idea about abortion. Yeah? So under her father's head, Jean-Marie Le Pen, who was the founder of this party, abortion was a very important issue. Marine Le Pen seems to bring her own party more to liberal views on ethical issues. This goes quite slowly, but exactly on the abortion issue, she is doing much more to make it possible for women to get an abortion, and she doesn't want to get rid of the legalized way of having abortion in France anymore.
Are both of them Catholic? I've seen different reports.
Yeah, well, Marine Le Pen is Catholic. She calls herself Catholic. She even calls herself extremely Catholic, how she says it. And she never doubted about her faith. She also says that she doesn't believe in the church in the way that she thinks the Catholic Church is involved in issues where the church should stay out of, like the immigration issues, private issues concerning how to live your own sexuality, etc. But inside this political party, the Front National, there is a mainstream or another stream which is much more conservative, and this is represented by her own niece, Maréchal Le Pen, who is representing the stream of her father, of the father of Marine Le Pen, and she is the more liberal part. So inside this Front National, there are two streams, two ways of looking to this kind of issue. At the other side, we have Macron, and Macron doesn't really show himself as a religious person. We know that he has some religious background. He even was a persistent of the Protestant philosopher Paul Ricoeur, who is highly appreciated also among Catholic philosophers and theologians. But he doesn't identify himself as a Catholic voter or as a Catholic person.
French voters rejected the two mainstream parties. What does that tell us about what French people are thinking?
Well, that's the most interesting part of this election, that the main parties, the left wing and the right wing, are both abandoned by French voters, and Macron is helping French voters to have a real alternative for them without going to the extreme sides. So Macron is helping French voters not to vote for these two traditional big parties without going to extreme left or to the extreme right part, which is completely new in the French political system.
Thank you so much. French journalist Hendro Munsterman, thanks for joining us. Pope Francis compares refugee camps to concentration camps and says international accords seem more important than human rights. He spoke during a prayer service Saturday where he paid tribute to the courage of martyrs from the last 2 centuries. The Holy Father comforted the sister of Father Jacques Hamel, who was killed by ISIS while celebrating Mass in France. The names of others who died for their faith were read aloud during the prayer service. Security is dominating headlines ahead of the Holy Father's visit to Egypt this weekend. Vatican correspondent Mary Shovelin joins us with more from Rome. Mary, we understand the Vatican briefed journalists on this trip today. What did you learn?
Lauren, the Vatican's going to great lengths to allay the public's fears about the Pope's security during this upcoming trip to Egypt, saying the security for this trip will be like that of any other. Many of the questions that were asked during today's briefing were about the Pope's safety and those of the people on the ground there. They have not revealed any increased security measures, not saying that there had been any. They're not revealing any changes to the Pope's schedule in light of what the bombings that took place in Egypt on Palm Sunday. And just the very fact, Lauren, that Pope Francis himself, even after the recent violence on Palm Sunday, has reconfirmed his will to take this trip and that he's going. I think he's set the tone that he's not worried about his own personal safety.
It's interesting. I helped run communications for the Pope's visit here in the United States, and it was at the highest level. What do you think the Pope's security detail is going to be like on the ground in Egypt?
What we learned today is that, for example, he won't be riding around in an armored vehicle, as one might expect, given the security concerns. He will take normal transportation while he's there on the ground in Egypt. We also learned that at the major events that will take place at masses or big public meetings, the Holy Father will ride around in a golf cart versus the traditional Pope mobile. Now, that may not be given to security concerns, but a golf cart is lower to the ground, maybe making him less of a target. Other than that, they're not revealing any of the other security measures that might be being put in place.
Well, that seems to make sense. Why is Pope Francis going to Egypt at such a volatile time?
The Vatican spokesman Greg Burke has told us today that there are really 3 main reasons, Lauren. First of all, pastoral. He's going as a pastor. The Catholic community there is less than 1% of the population in Egypt, a country that numbers about 90 million. Christians as a whole number about 10% of that population in a mostly Muslim majority country. So first of all, he's going as a pastor to bolster the Catholic community, the Christian community. Again, ecumenical. The second reason he's going for ecumenical reasons is to strengthen those ties with the Coptic Christians there and all the Christian churches in Egypt. And the third reason is interreligious, to further that dialogue with Islam. As we've heard Pope Francis say time and again, increased dialogue is a way to reduce religious extremism.
Right. Okay. Thank you so much, Mary Shevlin, EWTN News Nightly Vatican correspondent. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Lauren.
And Pope Francis meets this week with members of the Council of Cardinals, his hand-picked group of advisors from around the world. Cardinal Sean O'Malley of Boston and the others joined the Holy Father this morning for his daily Mass, which he resumed after a brief Easter break.
Sono cose concrete, la concretezza della fede.
The Pope used his homily to ask everyone to remember that our faith is concrete. Coming up, President Trump makes a call to space after an American astronaut makes history. And our foundress.
All the wonders of God's providence.
On faith. I would encourage you to thank God for the faith you have and ask Him to increase it. Words of wisdom from EWTN's foundress, Mother Angelica, on this Monday. Former President Barack Obama returns to the spotlight, holding his first public event since leaving office.
So, what's been going on while I've been gone?
Billed as a conversation on community organizing and civic engagement, the former president led a panel discussion at the University of Chicago. It's all part of his goal to support leaders of the future.
The single most important thing I can do is to help in any way I can prepare the next generation of leadership to take up the baton and to take their own crack at changing the world.
Obama's presidential library is planned near the edge of the Chicago campus. He says he hopes it will serve as a place for young people to become more civically engaged. President Trump marks an out-of-this-world milestone for the country. He made a call to the International Space Station today to congratulate NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson. She set the U.S. record for the most days in space, more than 534 in total.
How does it feel to have broken such a big and important record?
Well, it's actually a huge honor to break a record like this, but it's an honor for me basically to be representing all the folks at NASA who make this spaceflight possible.
I'm wondering if she wants a hamburger. Whitson already was the world's most experienced spacewoman and the oldest woman in space. By the time she returns to Earth in September, she'll have logged more than 660 days in orbit over 3 missions. A prominent conservative commentator who was also a faithful Catholic has died. Kate O'Byrne was a longtime editor of the National Review and a panelist on CNN's Capital Gang. She served as Assistant Health and Human Services Secretary in the Reagan administration and has worked for Heritage Foundation. The Catholic League president says O'Byrne was a smart, courageous conservative who never ducked an opponent. O'Byrne died of cancer yesterday. She's survived by her husband and 2 sons. Up next, Message of Mercy. Pope Francis continues a tradition started by Pope St. John Paul II. And he was known as an advocate for education. We'll introduce you to a French priest who could become a saint. A French priest is one step closer to becoming a saint. Father Louis-Antoine Ormières was beatified in Oviedo, Spain on Saturday. The priest dedicated his life to education and founded almost 90 schools in France and Spain. Pope Francis recognized a miracle last year attributed to Father Ormières. One more miracle is needed before he can be canonized and declared a saint. Pope Francis says mercy is the keystone for our life of faith. He spoke to pilgrims in St. Peter's Square for yesterday's Feast of Divine Mercy.
Che la violenza, il rancore, la vendetta non hanno alcun senso.
The Holy Father says divine mercy makes us understand the primary victims of violence and revenge are those who harbor these sentiments, because it deprives them of their human dignity. Pope St. John Paul II established Divine Mercy Sunday during the Jubilee year 2000. During his visit to Fatima next month, Pope Francis will canonize Francisco and Jacinta Marto, two Portuguese shepherd children who witnessed the Virgin Mary 100 years ago. Exploring the heroic virtue in children is the topic of a new book, Littlest Suffering Souls, Children Whose Short Lives Point Us to Christ. Joining us now is the author of that book, Austin Ruse. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. You're not just the author of this book, but you're also the president of the Center for Family and
Human Rights
at the UN, CFAM.
Yep, that's right.
And you're a well-known author and columnist. And let me tell you, I needed tissues reading this book. If you want a tearjerker, this is it. And it talks about suffering, especially suffering among young children, which I don't understand. It is so hard to wrap your head around. Tell us about the stories of these three children.
Well, it's the story of three children, contemporary children. You know, these are not from another century. These children all died in recent years. Each of them suffered greatly, died young, and in the process of their suffering and their joyful lives brought many people to the faith, intensified the faith of their own family members. In one case, Audrey of La Salle St. Cloud really brought the faith into her family, and half of her brothers and sisters joined religious orders.
You told a story about Brendan's mother, one of the children, Maura, and you said she was watching Brendan suffering. She was angry at God. She stopped going to church, and she believes Brendan refused to die because he saw that she hated God. And during particularly tough treatments, Brendan would say, "This is for you, Mom." He knew what he was doing. He was offering his pain for his mother's return to God. He was bringing her back to the faith. How beautiful is that?
Brendan offered all of his suffering for other people. His specialty was dads without jobs, marriages that were in trouble, and his mom. And he, you know, they would go into a particularly terrible treatment, as you quote from the book, and he would say, "Mom, this one is for you." Because Maura was angry at God. She stopped taking communion. She eventually obviously came back, but Brendan offered it all for other people. He was getting a bone marrow transplant and offered his suffering for Bella Santorum. And they believed that he saved her life and that she lives today because of Brendan.
Wow, and that's Senator Rick Santorum's daughter. What does the church teach us about suffering? How do we wrap our minds around suffering children?
The teaching of the Catholic Church is utterly unique on suffering, and I did a tremendous amount of research on this. You know, our Protestant brothers have a particular view. We have a much deeper and richer view than the Jews or the Muslims or Protestants. The Church obviously teaches that that pain is a tool that we offer for others, for ourselves, for getting out of purgatory, for helping others out of purgatory. It is a tool. But we also participate in the redemption. John Paul II wrote an encyclical on this, which I found, as a Catholic, even shocking for myself, that we help complete the redemption through our own suffering, as long as we do it with the proper intention. So the teaching to the Church is deep and vast on suffering and unique. And these children knew it.
Oh, and the fact that they knew it and they were so young to go through this, their lives just point us, as you say here, right on the front, to Christ.
Yes, indeed.
And pointing us to Christ teaches the adults in their life about that kind of suffering. So thank you so much, Austin Ruse, for writing this book, first of all. And boy, just get the Kleenex. I cried listening to the stories of not just Brendan, but the two other children.
You get your money back if you don't.
Okay, well then, nobody's getting their money back. Austin Ruse, thank you so much, author of Littlest Suffering Souls. That does it for us here at EWTN News Nightly. To all of you around the world, I'm Lauren Ashburn. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook and Twitter. We leave you tonight with historical reenactments in Rome. Hundreds of men and women dressed in the clothes of their ancestors gathered yesterday to celebrate the city's birthday. No one knows the exact year the city was founded, but odds are 753 BC. Good night and God bless.
Quando mi incontrerai nel regno dei morti!